Right. So today we're with Alex Collier. Alex is out of Perth, Australia, um, and he has built a successful business, small business, developing apps for different businesses in his area. And we want to talk to Alex today about, just his whole development process and his use of alpha. And so, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company there?
Yeah, sure. So my company, AC Business Ads, there's two of us. So we're a very small company. So mainly I do the work and I've got another part-timer. Really what I specialize in is really just onboarding other developers actually. I do a lot of the work I get and also a lot of professional services in terms of integrating anything or anything really into Alpha Anywhere. Um, or anything like web-based jQuery plugins, etc., etc. Um, so essentially, how I got started and how I got all into this. So essentially, it all came going way back into when I was back a youngster. So close to 35 now. So went back in 18. I basically went to university, did a degree in accounting. I then got a job in the corporate land of accounting and basically climbed the ladder and decided after 3 or 4 years in that accounting space, I came to know a lot of Excel and a lot of back then what CSV was and you know simple scripting, got exposure to Microsoft Access and you know, all of this sort of around the era of Windows 95 where it's getting traction up into the Windows 98 era. Um, and essentially using skills, they should get become pretty much a wizard in terms of VB and scripting in Excel. So, you know, imagine an accountant building Excel documents automatically, things like scraping information from one system to another. We had an entire uh, listed company in Australia for I was working for. The entire board pack that got produced with all the financials was one big string of Excel documents.
Wow.
And this thing is like 1,000 different Excel documents seamlessly. So, the job of accountants at month end was to go through and update move the cells from the next cell across to get to the next month, and then compare that to the previous year and graph a bunch of stuff. So, the process, I first started doing that and we're working with an ERP system that primarily DOS at the time. Um, Essentially, you scrape the information out and you dump it in Excel books, and then you try to work it by using like Power Pivot. And this is where the scripts came in. So I built scripts to sift through all the information, basically build Excel documents, and then build Excel documents to link to those Excel documents to a point where I can build something that essentially just opened up more Excel documents and connected itself together and basically created like a spider network of information. That sort of got born, that fact that you're getting way too big and it was getting really clunky in terms of stuff like that for Excel. And that's born where we started putting Microsoft Access data flows in there. That obviously the VB and stuff like that, along with the scripting in that languages and stuff like that. Going forward, I decided to do, programming on the side, and it's always been a self-taught from ever in the day, and I just keep on learning and learning. That I always think the benchmark for my typical day, I would spend probably 2 hours learning something completely new. That's quite a substantial amount, and then I would spend another 2 hours of learning for 1 hours, also learning what I previously learned, the previous week or 2 weeks, and then the rest of the time I would actually, work and a lot of other things I have to do in order to get, pay the bills and, food on the table for the time being. So essentially the role became as a corporate accountant, like a information systems role as well. So where I was introduced to implementation ERP systems and, like integrations into those. need to know, like, certain scripting languages, and here comes the born of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I got on pretty early back in the day, where you sort of like do some jQuery on the page and sort of just use PHP to inject stuff into the script pages. Sort of how
Wasn't
I
that
was
was
sort
it?
of born.
That was an interesting time because I remember I've been programming a long time. I started in it was like in the mid 70s. And on my first microcomputer I had when I was, so it was 1979 was my first microcomputer. And so I've been writing code for a long time, and progressed through. I started actually with assembly language, and then got into BASIC, and then Pascal, and then C, and Delphi, and then I wrote a lot of stuff in DBase and all kinds of stuff. I remember when the web appeared, it was like taking this massive step backwards. It seemed it was like, oh, okay. So now we have to hand code all this HTML and wire it in with try to wire it in with some databases and some odd scripting languages and all of that, and so to me it felt, because the development tools had gotten really pretty good by the mid 90s, and I think the internet really started to have a major impact on businesses here, and people really took notice of it around 95, 96. And it was still dial up. I think I had I had a T1 line at one. Yeah, I had a T1 line. It cost me a fortune, um, because I knew the web was going to be so important. But boy, yeah, it was a little rough at the start, And I know
Yeah.
that I found Alpha. Oh, so it was around 2002 when I found Alpha, and they had just come out with I think it was version 6, and for the first time I was like, wow, okay, this makes it pretty easy to build data driven web apps. And that's what actually originally attracted me to Alpha. So what was how did you stumble across Alpha, and what attracted you to that? How did you become convinced that, number one, you wanted to learn it and you wanted to put the effort into learning it, and number two, that it was going to really give you an advantage against any competitors, when you started building business apps?
Okay. Yeah. So the key one reason is that I needed to build a piece of software, and I needed to pretty much a micro ERP system. So I went down the barrel of either, sitting there and building a lot of code, or spinning an entire team worth of coders in order to, embark on building a little mini ERP for the accounting department and slash beyond. I needed something that would grow in the future and was fairly easy to learn and get on with doing stuff. And essentially, I did some research, and a few other people in the market at the same time. A minute I sort of came across Software Anywhere, gave it a trial, and then he gave me an extra extended license more than what you just get the 30 days. I think I got ended up 120 days or something, just to really evaluate it. I built an entire piece, and after that I fell in love with it. It was just so, it's sort of something, was that if I was going to build something, this is what I would build essentially. At the end of the day, you need a platform, and it's really nice to just go to one place and then have everything as your central repository, build the information, and generally what happens these days is like utilize other people's work. So you pick other open source technologies, and you would have to glue them all together, and it sort of happens in that way. But elsewhere, sort of, it's thought about everything, can put everything in, it's got all different events. But if you come across something that doesn't exist, they've got an amazing team, like the team like Richard, One, and then this entire, those are the main people. Obviously, the team that would be, I email them sometimes, and like, this would be a great feature. here's all the source code that I was trying to, this is what I achieved at the end of the day. And, mate down the next day, so when sometimes so it's done. I think, I think the one thing was, you know, just something really easy, like, the drop down box, sometimes of like 5 and you want the drop box to automatically be 100% of the width. But then when you click on the drop down, you want that to be 100% width. Essentially, this is a great example. I emailed so basically said that, well, it'd be great if you could match the width, because currently you could only put um, uh, fixed pixels, and then the next day it's long as that's done, and then now in Builder you can just type in match, and that's where that feature came from. And there's several other features as well. Like I think the latest pre-release that had all these all the stuff about the login authentication and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
that was based off a conversation we had with Richard, so I think a few other people, and then he took the code that I really in jQuery and all that sort of stuff, and actually integrated it so it all works in the wizards. And now it only takes maybe 1 or 2 hours, and you've got a working system with user authentication rules, and it's brilliant. Like I think I picked up a like it was about 4 months ago, and in the first week I had it thing up and running and working, and the next week I had a whole module in there. They're just like, oh, they're like, how many people you got working on this thing? I'm like, just me. Just it's a system for massive productivity, and to get and if you learn it inside out like I have, you absolutely appreciate how much is into the product, and you never get stuck. And that was one of the things that I realized when I was evaluating it, is like, well, I know how to do it effectively, but not everyone does, obviously. But if you do know how to do something and it doesn't actually exist in the product, you can actually do it. It's not going to stop you. So you can do your own handle events if it doesn't exist. But it's one of those things. It's like, well, if you come up with something and you've actually used it, or sharing it back, the feedback, they love the feedback. If you say something really good, they're more likely to put it back into the product, and everyone benefits. And that's what I love about the whole experience of using it.
Yeah, so really what you're talking about is just the ability to, communicate directly with the company in terms of and the senior developers and share ideas, and then those ideas are incorporated into the product itself. Because one of the things we always focus on is, just trying to make things easier for people, trying to make you guys more productive. I mean, that's our whole mantra, really. I wanted to talk to you. I was interested. You're doing a lot of interesting stuff. You're doing some work with Node.js, React, Python, Delphi, all kinds of cool things. These are all. So I am always learning and exploring. Always. I've done it my whole life, and I continue to be amazed at all the tools that are out there. And one of the things that I think that I really like about Alpha is that I can leverage all kinds of things. I haven't had it ever get in my way. And so I know I've done some work with adding features into Alpha that are using Node.js. And in fact, all of the icons that I generate now for the Android apps, the iOS apps, and coming soon, the PWAs.
I finally actually going to put that in there.
Well, I'm working on that right now, and I just finished the stuff that generates the icons yesterday. But that's all done through Node. Node is actually driving Image Magic in the background, and of course that's running on your development machine. When those things are developed. But I was curious what you're doing with Node, and what you might be doing with some of the other technologies.
Yeah, sure. So the Node has really come about. So obviously we are aware that Node.js exists as optional language inside Alpha Anywhere. It is controlled by a basic, but there's nothing stopping you installing your own Node.js server and just running it to the side. it perfectly lets you do that, and you could even just build a completely separate service using it. In which case, I build I actually spin up an entire Kubernetes cluster. So people know what Kubernetes is. It's just basically container orchestration with Docker. Just allows you to pull a bunch of servers together and throw it. Essentially, why would I use Node.js over XBasic? Well, the only reason I use Node.js is because there's a massive open source community and libraries available.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you find that most languages or most sites you go to, say, One Signal, and especially all the ERP solution providers like this ones like Xero or Mile or eBooks, financial accountant. I want to extract information out of these systems. I could sit there and out all the HTTP endpoints and then my own wrappers over paginations, over the HTTP calls using curl, using the amazing wizard that's sitting in XBasic. I have done that to that extent to do a full integration into One Signal for both a web and mobile solution. But in this case, I would use Node.js in order to use the SDKs available. So I use like consume SDKs, which gives me a perfect environment, so I can just write code in JavaScript and execute the commands needed, just something to work against. Like just it's a file with like hundreds of functions available here, and it will handle pagination, it will handle all this sort of stuff. So all you have to do is tell the XBasic command, maybe command, you can wrap the entire Node.js output into that one command if you're working directly from the browser itself straight to JS, as long as you use a decent application layer, which I've also built myself in doing all this. I managed to build my own authentication layer, but that's something else.
You'd mentioned that you've done some work with React and Python in Delphi. How do those play into your development tools? How do you use them?
Yeah, sure. So the React side of things is obviously a UI framework for building, native like UI. That's only really come about recently, only because as my continuous learning, the thing is to keep a foot on the latest web trends and what's all the rage about React, and like you've got to learn it to make it practical, right? So and in doing so, like actually Alpha Anywhere can actually fit quite nicely. I can actually just put Anywhere inside React application if I want to. But most of the time what happens is that I do snippets in React because other companies I'm involved with have built Angular apps or React apps. It's just, you've got to know it, put whatever you need to put into a certain thing. And the latest being Delphi, they're a Delphi through and through. They've got an ERP system fully written in Delphi. So what I've done, rather than fully rebuilding everything in Alpha, what we've actually done is taken Alpha, that one little app, and then have made that part of the ERP module.
I see.
So
okay.
The latest feature that we built was like a safety module that went in there, and then it also is going to have a mobile application part of it as well, potentially on the mine sites as well.
Now, in your mobile stuff, you're using Android Studio and Xcode. So, are you developing on a Mac?
Well, bit of both, because obviously at a point where I have to open up the Mac, I don't by definition do it on the Mac. I would do it on the Windows Alpha Anywhere as much as I can, and then once I'm ready, I port it over using a shared drive onto a Mac that I've got here.
Okay.
And then I would run it in Xcode, do testing in Xcode, customizing it, because especially the stuff I was doing for One Signal and all so I built obviously an XBasic class wrapper over One Signal that does all the advanced stuff you want One Signal to ever do. And then that obviously done all the code to subscribe One Signal, get that all up and running. So when you log in, into the mobile app, you get registered in one signal, push notifications coming in your tray. Also manage to customize the app to not only go one step further, but in the Xcode, we override the advanced settings in one signals documentation that show you how to do it. You can make custom little, basically like a little applet, I think they call it in Apple, and then Android's separate code. But you basically implement the ability to basically either wake the screen up, so then when the phone is, on not wake stage, it actually wakes it up and shows you the message if it's a high alert message. Which is, when I first did it, it was then iOS 11 and 12 came on, and they wanted more settings and more things. Over the time, I've had to tweak it a little bit, but you can't. I think the latest one says you can't. It's actually an SOS message, I think. But it's prominent when you first touch the screen. It shows lock screen.
I think it's great that that you've gotten competent with Xcode and with Android Studio, because, when you get into mobile development now, we use the CLI tools to actually build the Cordova apps. And I've written a lot of plugins, Cordova plugins that we use.
I think I'm still using the video, the camera one you built.
I've built a number of them, and but I've really enjoyed using the native tools, Xcode and Android Studio. When you start to become more proficient with those tools, you can really start to use their debugging tools. Are fantastic. You can really see what's going on in not only in the native code and in the JavaScript code, and of course using the Chrome debugger and all that. It just really helps to really it just makes your life as a developer a lot easier if you can understand all these different things. So I always encourage people to, jump in, give it a try, see what you can do. And some people resist because they're like, no, I live in the world of JavaScript and I don't want to go there. But I think that the native SDKs for mobile have gotten really, really good, and it's good for you for jumping in.
Yeah, exactly.
The one other thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up today was I wanted to talk about how you deploy. So are you using the Alpha's cloud for deployment? Are you deploying to your own servers or any of the other services that are out there?
I do all.
Yeah.
So I did a mixture of all of them, really. So as you may be aware, that I also do professional services for Alpha as well. So
right, yeah.
So different deployments I use. Obviously, I've used the Alpha Cloud, which I think the work that Kurt's done is absolutely amazing. I think he knows it. Lovely guy. I think we spent about an hour or 2 hours the other day talking on the phone. Well, we ended up getting sidetracked about other things and how his plans are to and he's also attempted to do some of the containerization stuff as well.
Yeah.
Inside that, so that may be a possibility in the future that Alpha is deployable to a container.
Right.
But with Alpha Cloud, it doesn't really matter too much. The fact that as long it all works, and it handles HTTPS, it handles all your domains, your custom things, and it load balances it nicely too over 2 or 3 or even more servers.
All right, I'm going to wrap up today. We're running out of time. So just if you have any closing comments to say new developers that might be interested in Alpha, some encouraging information for them, you got anything to say about that?
Yeah, just don't be scared. Get in there, because amazing program. More thing. And if you to get started and really embrace it, come out pretty much daily. So I like to sit there every morning and refresh the page, and I actually get quite disheartened if they haven't written anything in the release notes each day, which is funny. It just keeps me up with all the different changes that happen. So I might get a chance to use the feature until maybe a month later. But at least I know what's there, and that's probably the key. There's thousands of settings. but all do, yeah, some of the tick boxes are amazing. They'll do things, especially that one, that pusher, great, amazing, real time thing. Like before that, you would have to then, build your own rocket technology to then communicate to do it effectively. But yeah, that pusher stuff, you tick the box and sign up to the pusher account, and essentially have real time push notifications. Used it to synchronize browse multiple instances of the same browser to basically, have a collaborative chat room and a bunch of other things. Yeah,
Yeah, you can do a lot with that. That's
yeah,
for sure.
and that's just one little feature of many thousands of features
Yeah,
available.
they keep coming, which hey, that's part of the fun of being a developer. Really, is the amount of tools that are available to us on a consistent basis. They just keep improving and improving, and that's what makes all of this fun. All right, well, listen, Alex, it's great talking to you, and we're going to wrap it up for today, and we'll talk again.
Thank you, Bob.
All right.